business owners, welcome back to the podcast. If you're listening to this on a traditional audio stream or a traditional podcasting platform, you may not realize this, but we are moving over to video podcasting. I am so thrilled. I spent the entire week setting up my video podcasting home studio. I have, my normal camera, but I also have an overhead camera to film my hands because I have a whiteboard here on my desk so I can be drawing things out with you and showing you the concepts in a more visual way. In the future, I'll also be able to share my screen, the whole shebang. So I'm really, really excited. If you would like to follow along with the video podcast, I highly recommend going over to YouTube at Gina Knox. We'll link it in the show notes, or Spotify as well allows for video podcast viewing, and we will go from here. I'm so excited. So anyways, this is the inaugural video podcast episode, and let's dive into today's topic. Today, we're going to be talking about the difference between a cash machine and a wealth machine, why you should care about that as a business owner, how they're different, and how they work together to help you have a financially free life and really be financially unbothered. All right. Now, the first thing we have to talk about is what a cash machine is and why it typically gets confused with a wealth machine. So a cash machine is simply a way that you make money every single month. So a cash machine could be a job, it could be your business, it could be a side hustle, right? How do you make money every single month? A cash machine, though, typically gets confused with a wealth machine. And I see this especially with my clients who grew up maybe not having strong financial role models in their lives, or maybe they're the first in their family to be financially successful. A lot of times there's this misconception that I just need to make enough money and then I will be wealthy. And that idea leads people to focus on the cash machine, right? I just need to make enough cash and that will make me wealthy. I used to actually have this little pet peeve, and I've gotten over it, but I used to have this pet peeve when people would make $1 million in a year in their business and they would say, I'm a millionaire. I would always be like, no, you're not. A millionaire means you have $1 million. You just made $1 million one time. Those things are different. Like I said, I've gotten over it. It's fine. It's good to be proud of your accomplishments, 100%. But this kind of lends itself to that idea that if I just make enough money, I'll be wealthy. No, that is absolutely false. That is absolutely false. And to illustrate that, I'm going to bring in a personal story of my dad. And if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you should know this story, but I'll reiterate it for the new folks. So my dad had an 18-year-long battle with cancer. It was a very rare cancer, very slow growing, but ultimately incurable cancer. And the other thing to know about him is that he loved his job. He was a lawyer. He worked for the same law firm from when he was a summer associate in law school all the way to the day he retired. He loved his work. He loved his coworkers. He loved his firm. I never heard him complain about his work. He was being mentored by the chair of his department to take over his department one day. But at the age of 60, he was forced to retire early. His pain management for his cancer treatment had gotten to a point where it was impacting his cognitive abilities, and he felt that it was no longer ethical for him to practice law and represent his clients anymore. So he made the difficult decision to retire early. Now, at the same time, my dad was the breadwinner. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for 4 kids for 30 plus years. She hadn't been in the workforce in a long time. And just because my dad was a high earner as a lawyer did not make him wealthy. Because if that were all it took, if it would just took, having a high paying job, then he would have been set, right? But imagine you have a high paying job and then the cash machine stops overnight. That's what happened to my dad. The cash machine stopped overnight because he was forced to retire. So what happened? His wealth machine kicked in. So let's talk about what is a wealth machine, Gina. Okay, if a cash machine is how you make money every single month, a wealth machine is when you take that cash that you made and you buy assets that appreciate over time without your labor required. Okay, that's a lot of jargon. What does that mean? You're buying assets, you're buying stocks, you're buying bonds, you're buying real estate, you're buying something. And that asset increases in value over time, and it doesn't require your labor at all for the value to increase. The value just increases without you. So let me draw this out. For our cash machine to work, and this is basic, or this is simplistic, you have tasks, you do them, you get paid for doing them. You spend the money because you have to pay, your bills, you have to pay for things. And in order to make more money again, you have to do more tasks, right? This is how cash machines work. They are fully reliant on your labor. And by the way, this is also true even if you have people working for you. This isn't just like you doing tasks, because you also have to think about, let's say you have a business where you have people working for you doing tasks. Well, then it's your task to manage them. It's your task to manage the business. There's no, even if it's a quote unquote passive business, it's not passive, because if you were to die, your labor would have to be replaced by someone or something, right? So in this scenario, the minute you stop being able to do tasks, the money disappears. There's no more money, right? That's how that all works. And I want to be clear. Let me come back to my face. I want to be clear. Cash machines are not bad. We all use them. In fact, in order to build wealth, unless you were just born into wealth, you got to start with a cash machine. And we want to focus on making our cash machines good and profitable and more efficient. But this alone does not build you wealth, because of that point. If you die, it stops. And again, it's not even as dramatic as if you die. What if you simply want to stop doing tasks? If you want to stop doing tasks, you have to have another way to have money. And that is exactly where a wealth machine comes in. So let's take a look at how that looks like. A wealth machine looks like this. You buy assets, the assets grow, you sell the assets when you need money. But even after you sell the assets to get money, the assets that are left continue to grow. There is no task, there is no labor involved in a wealth machine. Now, I want to be clear. It's not that the assets grow, perfectly linearly. Assets also have variability in their growth. It can look like that, but assets grow over time. And there are ways to make sure that your portfolio is essentially, what are the assets in this pot of stuff? There's a way to make sure that your portfolio is well diversified, is safe, is going to grow over time. But the important thing here to remember is that it doesn't require tasks. That's the important part here. And now here's the other important part. A cash machine typically makes you more money the more effort you put in. And it can look more controllable because you can control the input, right? But even then, a cash machine can kind of look up and down like this. That's pretty normal. The problem here being, you stop, the money stops. But I always like to show this because, especially as business owners, our income is inconsistent, and that's okay. On the flip side, a wealth machine tends to look like this. It looks like an exponential curve. This is really important to understand because the first 10 years, you will probably say, this isn't working. It's growing so slowly. It's not actually making me any real money. But the thing about the wealth machine is that last year of growth is probably equal to the first 10 years of growth. It grows faster over time. And especially at the end, it grows a lot. And remember, all of this growth does not require your labor. On the other hand, a cash machine might kind of look like the inverse. And this is not, this is not a rule, but it's generally speaking like what we see. We see that as time goes on, your input goes down, right? Like as we get older, we probably want to do less. Again, that's not a rule. It could also look different. It can maybe look more like, actually, now that I say it, it probably looks more like a bell curve. When I'm younger, I'm probably making less money. When I'm, in my midlife, I'm probably making the most money. And this just follows typical career trajectories. And as I get older, as my input goes down, I probably make less money. That's super important because the wealth machine is counter that. As your income is going down as you get older, your wealth is going up. And again, with no labor versus the cash machine is your labor. I'm writing really sloppily, but I'm just very excited about this. So this is the way we want to think about that. And especially in these high income years, we want to be pumping money into our wealth machine as much as possible during high income years, because there will be low income years where we can't. And in order for us to have this hockey stick growth at the end of our wealth machine, we need to have funded it earlier. Going back to my dad funded his wealth machine in his 40s and 50s. He started late. He went to school late. He took a 5-year break before going to college after high school. He graduated law school late. He was behind in terms of his career. But in his 40s and 50s, he aggressively funded his wealth machine. And it's actually kind of heartbreaking. I found some of his personal writings recently in that last, I don't want to cry, in that last year of his life, not even the last year, the last couple months of his life, where he spoke about, some of his regrets and some of his joys. And one of the things he wrote about was, he's like, man, maybe I shouldn't have worked that hard. But I'm so happy that by doing that, I was able to build this nest egg, and I'm not worried about Araceli, my mom, because that wealth machine that he built is continuing to be the breadwinner for my mom. It's paying her bills. And so I do think, he was diagnosed with his cancer in his 40s. I think he was aware of his mortality. And I think that he felt like, if I don't fund aggressively a wealth machine, I'm putting my family in a really scary situation being the breadwinner. So I say this to say, even if you're quote unquote late, that's not really the thing that we should be focused on. The thing we should be focused on is when you're in your high income years, you cannot spend all of that money. If you spend all your money in your high income years and you don't grow a wealth machine, all you're doing is setting yourself up for a scenario where you have to keep earning the same amount of money, or you have to dramatically downsize your life. And I have seen that. I have seen, some of the partners in my dad's law firm where they spend every dollar that they make. Yeah, they're making $800K, $1 million, $2 million a year salary, but they're spending all of it. And so what happens when they too can no longer practice law? Where are they going to pay their bills from? It's one thing to be a high roller and be all flashy and cool, but it's another thing to then have to turn around, have a major life event happen to you, turn around and have to completely downsize your life, maybe sell your house, sell your cars, completely change everything about how you're living. It's not dignified. My dad died with dignity because he built a wealth machine that continued to pay the bills after he could no longer work. And as business owners, I implore you to also do the same. The other thing too, as business owners, especially in the United States and Canada, we have some major incentives by the government through tax law to help us fund our wealth machines and get major tax write-offs. So really, I implore you to do this because there's going to be a day where you no longer want to work or where you can no longer work. And we don't want you to have to scramble and change your life overnight because we didn't build a wealth machine. Now, in the next couple episodes, I'm going to dive a little bit more into the nuances. But if you're listening to this and you're like, Gina, I don't have extra money. I don't have extra money to fund a wealth machine. Well, that should be goal number one. And especially if you're a business owner, the way we do that is through profit. We need to start by looking at your profit. And that has its whole slew of things attached to it, right? Essentially, the goal for you is we need to increase your owner's pay if you're not currently at a place where you can fund a wealth machine. That's the goal, increase your owner's pay. I did a whole episode on how your owner's pay goal should be more important than your revenue goal. And you should go listen to that as well. But that is what we do inside of Small Business Money School, which is my 12-month program for business owners to focus in on the business finances. We take you through 4 distinct steps in order to do that. Know your numbers, control expenses, pay off debt fast, and then increase profit. And it's designed to get you to increasing profit in the fastest way possible. And if you don't have debt, you would just skip the debt section. If you are at a point where you're like, I am getting paid well from my business, my owner's pays good, but I still don't have a wealth machine, that is where 7-Figure Wealth is going to come in. It's my 6-month mastermind where we focus on building out the wealth machine itself, taking the owner's pay, you're paying yourself and making sure that you're using it to grow your wealth. You shouldn't be sitting on $100,000 of cash in a bank account that you're not using. I have a client who literally had like $400,000 cash in her business bank account doing nothing when that could be making her 5+ figures in passive income a year right now. So definitely, if that's you, that's something to consider. And I have lots of free resources on the podcast as well around both of these things. But we should definitely be focused on solving the right problem at the right time in order to get you to building a wealth machine as quickly as possible. Okay? All right. With that, I will see you guys in the next episode. Literally see you this time. I'm so excited. And we're going to continue on this theme for a couple weeks and going into little rabbit holes and tangents because it's really, really freaking important. Okay? All right. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.